Hello everybody and welcome to another ARKHAM Town Hall here on the channel. I am Justin from Playing Board Games, and today we're going to be talking about all of the double events from Hemlock Vale and then one from Scarlet Keys. We're going to talk about how they play, if they were successful in their designs, and then we're going to kind of just do a little bit like of just putting them in these boxes and kind of deciding from there like just how I feel about the cards. Not even in terms of like just like not like in terms of like how playable they are, because that's kind of like my main goal when I'm looking at these cards. And it's and just like how often I actually see myself and others playing them is kind of like the metric we're going to be looking at for these cards here. But we're going to talk about them, dived in, kind of poking them one by one and have a good time here. Because this is an ARKHAM Town Hall, I'm doing this live on Twitch, where I'll be able to also field questions from the people at home. All right. Double cards. So, double cards all are events, which is nice and simple because events are simple and fun. And they all cost an additional action to play. That is like the base level for double cards for how to grok them. The first time we saw a double card was in Scarlet Keys, where we saw Refine. So it's additional cost to play Refine, spend an action, immediately mark a checkbox and upgrade sheet for a customizable card you own, even if it is not in play. Max once per game for each investigator. So you can spend 2 actions to basically get an XP point, which to some people is worth it. I'm not at that part of the video yet, but this is when we first saw this. So you can kind of just see like the groundwork for double cards being seen here, right? Where the idea is if the effect is powerful, it's got to be worth 2 actions. So it's kind of carried over to varying levels of success for these cards. I think the exception to that in a cool way. So I think for the most part, all of the double cards, including Refine, all of the class color double cards and Refine, so big, are all this concept, right? Where it's a powerful effect, but oh, there is one. I did grab this is no, you were right. It is Ethereal Weaving. Thank you. Yes, okay, that's right. They're all events that have powerful effects. Good thing we didn't get to this card yet, but this is the double. That have powerful effects that you want to play and get the full value of. Like, that's the thing. It's like, the concept is 2 actions worth of value jammed into 1 card. The exception to this, of course, is Bide Your Time, right? Where Bide Your Time is not exactly on the same mechanical level of all these cards, where this one is literally just like banking your actions for the next turn, which again has some uses. I do love the art of Lily Chen just ready to take off her jacket and her hat and like start just like fucking people up, as you can see on this card over here, right? Like, this is the before, this is the after. But this one is a very interesting one because it kind of goes against the grain of what we've seen in the other double cards that exist here. So with the concept of, as we're getting deeper into this conversation, we're going to look at each of these double cards as how do they hit the idea and value of 1 action, like 2 actions and a card. That's kind of like what we're like putting into this thing. Is there enough value out of it that you get out of it? As we're going to look at all of these. Again, by the time is going to be the exception because it is different. I do agree it should cost 1 action less if you have fine clothes just because of the art. You know, I think like let's Arkham Horror 2nd edition this up. Let's get really specific, right? Like, let's let Crowbar break open a locked door, right? Like, let's like, or a Fire Axe break open a locked door. Let's get funky with it. All right. Each class, as you can see, got 2 exceptional cards. The other thing that's really cool about exceptional cards is you'll notice that they each follow a similar trend in their committing pips, where there is going to be 1 that commits for 3, and there's going to be 1 that commits for 1, 2, and a wild. And you see that carry over in Flurry of Blows is the wild. Thorough Inquiry is the wild. Dirty Deeds is the wild. Ethereal Weaving is the wild. And Wrong Place, Right Time is the wild. So, again, this also is kind of just giving some further insight into the power of these cards. Because I think that unless the effect on the card is very good, it is hard to consider running these cards in most decks unless you also, like, you want to play the card, or if the commit symbols are good. It's why I think Thorough Inquiry is pretty successful, because the icons it can commit for are very good. And why I think that Wrong Place, Right Time, while the card itself isn't good, it's made up a little bit by the fact that the symbols that it commits for are actually relevant to a lot of tests that survivors are going to be making on the defensive or on the foot side offensive. This is only talking about the pips. Notably, though, this is it's kind of interesting, because if you look at this, Guardian has an experienced version, Rogues have an experienced version, Mystics have an experienced version, but the Survivor and Seeker ones, they don't have an experienced version. So obviously there wasn't an idea of balance throughout this cycle. They were just like, they designed the cards and they said, like, they probably said at the baseline, okay, we want 2 double events for each class, right? And we're not going to make like 1 experienced, 1 unexperienced, right? We're not following that. We're just, the only thing we know is we want 2 of our events from this cycle to be double cards. So with all this said, all this leeway, let's get to the first question, and I would also love to field some input here from the people watching at home on Twitch chat right now. Do we think the concept of double events is a good one? I'll start. This is like from the mechanical wise, like the mechanic wise. Like, do we think mechanically double events are interesting design space that they explored? And I agree with the 4 people who have said it already in chat. Yes, I think that double events are a very good mechanical design space to explore. And I think that as a whole, the double suite of cards have been a very successful part of the Hemlock Vale pool. Does this mean that all the cards are super playable? No, I do not think all the cards are super playable. I think there are some that are much better than others. And I think as a whole, the power level for them are actually pretty passable to flat. But I do think that mechanic-wise, this is a very successful part of the card design and the card pool that I think we're going to see play for a while, and we're going to see more of them actually like pop up in the future too. Not in the sense of like new designs, but I could see suddenly someone actually like making, like, this is going to get enough support. Ethereal Weaving is going to get enough support. We're going to see maybe someone can actually like take advantage of Wrong Place, Right Time and know that one deck you played it in, yes, it worked there, but it's not enough for me to like actually like take this card super seriously. Or like a Flurry of Blows deck's gonna pop off, because I did try this, and like, we'll get to the individual cards themselves, but I think that they're gonna have a lot of time in the future to suddenly be like, oh, wait a minute, there's a reason why I want to play this in this deck, and you're gonna see great success apart from just like doing it once or twice. The other thing I really like about the double events is that there's a lot of like quiet synergies that have slowly been popping up, right? Where like you can play double-double. Double-double. I need to put a comma in here. Of course, the English language. It has rules. But the double-double, the idea is that you can play one and then only spend an action to play the other, right? Fence with the rogue ones, exactly that, right? Like, all this kind of stuff like is quiet synergy that's popping up here. I'll get Fence on the screen too for people who might not know. These quiet things that are popping up. Marion, yes, I'm pretty sure, is she in here yet, or did I not drop the box in? She is in here right now. Marion is another one, right? Like, these are all ways that have slowly been popping up that give these double cards even more even more synergies, which is really cool. And that's kind of why part of the reason why Arkham Horror is been so successful, is because even though your deck building is did it again. I did this on stream last time. Yes, the SED team is so great. We love them. But it's one of those things where, like, the deck building here, let me just grab like, give me Roland, right? They got me twice in that with 1 week, right? But, like, even though the deck building is actually restricted, there is a lot of exploration that can be done within the card pools that investigators have. So it's kind of like in Magic the Gathering, how you're able to express yourself through your colors. You can actually do the same in Arkham Horror, and I think that the double events are a good example of that. There's tons of ways they can do this. If you want to see what's on the back of Marion's card, you have to go check it out yourself. Them's the rules, kids. Them's the rules. But yeah, so that's why I think that these are, and why didn't have someone say no. Why the double events are a successful design. Now, let me also ask this to the people at home, people who are watching. Do you have a favorite double card? Is there one that you like the most? Because I'm very curious what the response is for this. Is there one double event that you like the most? Okay. So we're seeing the most coming in the form of task force, bank job, and thorough inquiry. And then there's some shouts for our good friend testing sprint. And yeah. These are the ones that I think are generally the most I've seen as well, right? But I think also, can we just take a second? Let's just take a second here, and let's go back in time to the year 2023 or 2024, whenever these cards were spoiled. People were crazy hard on Bank Job. Wow, that's interesting. You find Task Force overrated. It's 2 resources for a clue in a situational scenario. I'm actually the complete opposite. I have never seen a task force once. Actually, one time of, like, probably the 30 times I've seen it now where it's not gotten full value. I think if it's not getting full value, that's a deck problem. So, I mean, maybe it's just not the style for the person who's using it in that case. But like I said, I've never seen this card not get 3 actions out of it. But yeah, this was a crazy thing about Bank Job. I remember there were a lot of people poo-pooing it when it first came out, because it's one of those things where people are like, we have Faustian Bargain. Why do we need another, like, economy card? Why would you ever play this card when you could just play Faustian Bargain, right? And it might sound like I'm being mean, but honestly, we need to be a little bit meaner. Because I remember our thought process when this card was first spoiled, when we talked about it on PBG, was that this and Faustian Bargain are actually doing 2 different things. And I think we've seen that in action in terms of how this card is actually played with at the table, right? 8 resources is a lot divided as you want. It does cost 2, and I'm going to also say that, like, in respect to the non-believers, this card is harder to play just generically than Faustian Bargain, but there's a lot of upsides and downsides to both of those cards, and I think that, as we've now seen after a year of playing with Bank Job, it's not just Faustian Bargain, it's different than Faustian Bargain. Likewise with Thorough Inquiry, this is a pretty good draw card, right? I think what also helps with Thorough Inquiry is the fact that the symbols that it commits for, as I was talking about earlier, are incredibly valuable to the Seeker class. Whether you be using it as a perception or as some defensive foot, like a defensive manual dexterity, are really nice options to have if you don't need to get the cards. I think that generically, card draw is, like, I think resource generation is always, it's funny because I think that like resource generation and card draw are both entering a place where these cards are a little bit more passive, right? They're super passive. And I have grown out of passive economy. I don't really enjoy it as much anymore. So for me personally, the double cards that I think that I like to find the most value in is like the ones that are entirely unique in what they do, right? So like Testing Sprint and Elaborate Distraction. Now I know there's different versions of these. There's Cunning Distraction and Deciphered Reality that kind of these cards are like different versions of. But I think that for me personally, and also Dirty Deeds, these are like my 3 personal top double cards, because I think, and I'm not saying that these ones that I were talking about earlier are bad, right? But I think that you can, what these provide is a little bit more relevant in terms of breaking things, like breaking things that otherwise should not have happened open. And when I say that, I don't mean that these cards are broken. That's not like that's not even close. I don't think there's actually a double card that is broken because they cost they cost money, resources, actions. So none of them are broken, right? However, what I mean they're broken is it allows you to do things that you otherwise are not able to do. So like Testing Sprint is, you can build around it in many successful ways. I have played Testing Sprint 3 times in 3 decks with the idea of taking advantage of it, right? And getting 1 million clues and 2 actions. And I have done it twice successfully. So that's why I enjoy Testing Sprint's design quite a lot. Dirty Deeds, I think, is just an insanely powerful card. This is my own issue. This is my own issue. But when everyone is telling me to play Underworld Market, I'm like, why would I not just play Dirty Deeds instead? Like, I can just find and shoot my gun. As opposed to like waiting X number of turns to find and shoot my gun, right? So it's like one of those things where that's for like my own personal thing for that. And then Elaborate Distraction, which we were all thought was, I need to go back and actually look at my reactions. That could be a fun thing to do. But this card actually is like a quiet goat. It's like Cunning Distraction, where a panic button is very good. All right, so I have some comments in chat that I wanted to bounce off of, because I think there were some good questions and some things for there. So, are you down on passive economy because all cards in that category feel too samey? No, I am down on passive economy because I think active economy is better. It just helps you win the game while also gaining resources. Examples of active economy are like, a lot of it exists in a rogue, in like Watch This, Thieves Kit, that kind of stuff, right? If I have my passive economy, I want it to be a little bit more jam-packed. So that's why, as people know, I'm a bigger, why I usually put the money in for eCash 2, because eCash on its own, of just 3 resources, is not enough for me personally. So that's why I like it to also replace itself. So like my economy needs to like do stuff like that. Also, it's just like, this is also like my own personal style of play, where at a certain point I don't need my resources anymore. So if my resources can be hyper efficient, then I can also be hyper efficient. That's like kind of what it comes down to. It's my own personal preference. Like there's no right or wrong way. Okay, there's a wrong way to play economy, which is not playing economy, right? But otherwise, if you are playing economy, find the way that economy works for you. And for me personally, I enjoy it more when my economy is, I don't have to spend actions to do it, unless those actions are also getting me clues. All right. There's also the one. Testing Sprint is one of the cards that makes people like us keep playing the game and inspires us to create new decks over and over. Amen. This is, I mean, it's going back to what I said earlier about why Arkham's so good. It's because that they throw in cards like this that make you go, huh, that's crazy. That's crazy. What can I do with this, huh? Like, you know? And then also, like, even in terms of, this is when people always call me a Johnny, right? Because I would build a weird idea around Testing Sprint, right? But I have to choose my words carefully here. As I try to put this into a thing here. I think that the levels of how you can label a player as Timmy, Johnny, and Spike, I don't think the Arkham community is like, I don't think they get it fully yet, because like it's not so much of everybody is one of those things. It's just like ways for players to express themselves of how they view their style of play, and for the designers to know that they want to hit all those metrics, right? Just because Travis likes to play some silly builds sometimes doesn't mean that he's not a Spike too, right? Like the only person who can decide what someone's role is, like what their like player preferences is that player. So something to keep in mind for that. Yes, I am still mad that people try to call me not what I am, but I'm the only one who can define that for me. So even though I'm building around Testing Sprint in multiple different decks, I am doing it as in my style of play. Yeah, and exactly that, right? Sometimes you have to jury-rig a council's coffer, right? Like, that is the fun part of Arkham, and if Travis needs to do that, Travis needs to do that. Yeah. All right. So, now let's go to a next question. What does chat, let's go to chat, and I'm curious if this is just going to be a chorus of people saying the same thing. I'm very curious about this one. What does everyone think is the least successful double card? Otherwise known as, what do you think is the worst? I do love someone just saying mystics. Yeah, I mean, everyone is saying mystics. Yeah, okay. Boom. All right. We got Antediluvian Hymn and Ethereal Weaving. Yeah, that's a great point about the Ethereal Weaving. So Ethereal Weaving would be playable if it didn't provoke attacks of opportunity. That is such an interesting point, because it's kind of like, how does this one not do that, right? I guess like the theory is that, like, so like let's put ourselves in the heads of like the designers, and this is also just speaking from ignorance. There's no actual there's no actual basis for this. There's no actual accuracy that any of this is right. But with Ethereal Weaving, what spells do they think you're going to be playing? Read the Signs, Spectral Razor are probably two of the spells, right? Maybe like one of the evade ones, right? But the reality is that the only way this does not provoke attack of opportunity on them is if you are Spectral Razoring as your first spell, taking an enemy from somebody else, right? Like, every other thing is going to be provoking attacks of opportunity. Chrissy, you're 100% right that it really kind of added... So already Ethereal Weaving has a lot of hoops you need to jump through, right? You need to have 3 different spell events from your hand, and then they all need to trigger. I think that part is doable. Card draw is good in this game now, and you'll be able to get there. And Mystics have always been good at finding spells specifically. But then you need to, like... do the thing. You need to, like, have the perfect situation where you want to be revealing 3 different spell events. There is... they do nothing to get you above tempo. I don't think that's true for Ethereal Weaving, right? Because you get actually a lot of value out of this card, right? But the problem is just that even in Magical Christmas Land, it's a lot of work for not enough, right? Because you're getting 3 events and you're reducing the cost. So you're essentially saving 3 actions on the resources, assuming that you also like haven't, like, you know, for that kind of thing. I wish this wasn't different, right? I wish it was just like up to 3 spell events. Like, it's like one of those things where it's just like there's a lot of limiting factors. But I also agree that this could make a comeback. Ethereal Weaving could make a definite comeback. But I think it's just so much for very little. I think notably, Flurry of Blows is also kind of there. I think it's just too much of as a 5 experience card. And again, I am not a Guardian Doomer. I recorded a video with Eric yesterday. Where I was talking about the Guardian class and how it is maligned, but my big problem with the Guardian class is that the cards are very fair for the most part, and I think this is an example of one, right? And I think that this is like an example that I think that in other classes, this probably wouldn't cost 5 XP, but in Guardian, it feels like it should, you know? And I think that's kind of like the issue that Guardians are kind of living with. But I think this one is kind of in the same kind of vein, where it's just like a lot of limitations to really make it like pop in the way other ones do. That's okay. So I think this card is splitting the payoff between extra action cost reduction plus 2 skill is a flaw on it, not a strength. I agree. There's like a little bit too much. If it was like reduce each by 2 and we got rid of the skill value, right? I do agree. I feel like it's kind of spread a bit too thin, because like that's an interesting point. There's 3 positives on this card. You get to play 3 events, you get reduce the cost by 1, and you get plus 2 skill value. None of those are particularly great, but they're all fine. But if one of them was great, then maybe it would do better. So like if it was like 1 at a time, play each revealed event, reducing its cost by 2, like that would have been a lot better. I never thought about that, but I think you're very right. And it's kind of funny how like small bonuses can actually like detract as opposed to like, you know, make it really good. I've seen Parallel Agnes go crazy with Weaving. I've also played Weaving to success. But like I also would love it if this card was like 2 experience. 1, because I think it would like feels better at 2, but also because I feel like there's a lot of spell events that you could potentially take advantage of if this was a splash card as well, right? And then there's the Hymn. I am notably very down on the Hymn. Travis notably has told me that I am too down on the him. So I mean that's my thoughts on it. Like slight spoilers. I do not think the him is it. And it's just because like for me personally, I don't know what it does. Like yeah, you can get rid of some cards, but I mean like I also, in all fairness, I look at most of my gameplay as 2-player because I play a lot of 2-player or 3-player. But in like 4-player, this could be used as a support card, you know? That's interesting for theory. I'd bump it up to 5 and play them from the graveyard. Shuffle it, put them into the deck after. That would be cool. Be a lot of text, but... I also wish like they actually kind of keyworded double, where they had to spend an action. Okay. But yeah, overall, I think that the double events are positive for the game. I think they actually are, as a whole, very well designed and super playable. So this is something that I noticed with Hemlock Vale, and I'm also kind of noticing with Drowned City, where the cards that are coming out don't read particularly like flashy, but then you play with them and you're like, wait a minute, this is actually like good. And that's like, I think the same, like, that was interesting events, because I know there was a lot of people who were very down on the double events, but I think a year has shown that these cards are actually very successful in their designs. And I feel like the same thing is going to be happening with Drowned City coming up soon. I think like the cards are just like good, and like you're going to play with them. Like even like on stream recently, I played with Nose to the Grindstone. This card. And I remember even reading this card when it was first spoiled, and I was like, yeah, it's okay. And then I played with it, and I was like, damn, like I'm fucking with this. Like I think this card is actually really, really nice in the decks that want to play it. And I'm already thinking like, how can I further take advantage of this card? And I think that's an exciting thing that I think we're kind of like missing for all that. So then I appreciate about you, Travis and Bryn, is that each of you evaluates cards in a different way, and I find that fascinating. Yes, it is something that we talk about quite a bit in the early days, how we were like different perspectives on and even like it even kind of boils down too, right? Bryn plays assets, Travis plays events, I play skills, is like kind of like how we would first talk about our like focus and how we do things. And that's we always feel very lucky that we do have such different perspectives of how we want to handle our decks and our card pools and our evaluation. You want to talk about wrong place, right time? So I think the awkward thing about wrong place, right time is that it's just like not really like, there's not really like a good home for it. And in the home that you can do it in, it's like not really worth it even still, right? Rogue was the best one so far, especially with the puzzle challenge you made. Thank you, Sun Prayer. I appreciate that. I put in an Agnes once and moved so much horror. I mean, yeah, like it is healing. Yeah, like that. That's the thing that I'm just like, I don't know. I'm curious about this card. Well, no, I don't think so. I think this card is... I think that we might be looking at this card wrong, right? Even in this conversation right now. I don't think that this is a card that's about soak. I think that the intention of this card is a draw 5 and survivor. These are the same card, in theory, right? I think that you're using this less for the soak, and you're more like, hey, what if I just, like, kill your stuff and draw 5 cards? Is it successful? No, I personally don't think so. I like it in Agnes. I think that's an interesting thing. I actually like the idea Agnes more than, like I've seen people say it in like Calvin. I think Tommy also makes sense because you're also then gaining resources. But I think like the true idea and what might crack this card open is if we change the perspective of, I mean, it requires a lot of work. But we change the perspective of this card from instead of being like this just changes soak, but instead being like this is a draw 5 in like Yorick. So Yorick plays all of his soak. He plays all of his soak, but he doesn't take any of it on his soak. He puts it all on himself. And then he plays this to draw 5 cards, and then he plays stuff from his discard that he discarded with this. Is that something? I personally don't think so, but I do think that just changing that perspective right now for me has made this card somewhat more interesting, but it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. So that's why you gotta combo it, right? That's why you can't let the game do it to you. You gotta also do it to yourself. Bless Yorick. Bless wrong place, right time Yorick. I don't know. You know, I'm gonna write it down. I'm writing that down. I'm gonna do it in a different color too, so I remember it. I'd be fine with at least drawing 3 or moving 3. Yeah, that's kind of the thought too. That's actually what I was thinking before I got on this weird tangent about this is actually a draw 5. If this card was not double but was 3, like maybe it cost 1 and it was move up to 3 damage under horror, like then we're talking. Because I guess the idea is that I actually do think it'd be pretty easy to trigger. But like then I think it's kind of, I don't know, man. I don't know. I'm cooking something in my head right now. I'm cooking something. I could maybe see that working. It removes from the, yeah, so like that's the thing. I feel like it also does remove itself from the game. It's a very peculiar one. And I think this one, it might get cracked late. And honestly, do we just crack it right now? Can you move it all to an enchanted armor? Oh, great question. This is like in the town hall when, hello? When they're just like, they're suddenly talking about sports. They're like, Mr. Mayor, what do you think of Connor McDavid's suspension? All right. Put it all on this. Fail the test, or alternatively, the second wrong place, right time, you move all the damage on this and then just auto pass in that Spirit of Humanity deck. Okay. All right, let's put these cards back into. Let's put these cards into these boxes. Actually, before we do that too, is there any other topics or like questions, comments about any of these cards you want us to like maybe dive into before we start putting these cards into some boxes? Ask if moving is placing. I'm gonna hope for the all that is good in the world. That placing and moving are the same thing. I'm not even gonna stress about it. They're the same thing, and if they aren't, I'm gonna push the button. I'm pushing the button. I'm firing the nukes. All right. So, I think the majority of these cards are good. I think Task Force is good. I don't think it's amazing. I think, so to me, I think it's a very successful card, but I think its ceiling is kind of low. It does scale with your deck, which is kind of cool, right? Where the action that you resolve on it is going to get better as people get better actions that they can resolve. And as I was saying earlier, I've never seen someone not get 3, and it generally is fine actions for it. Obviously in Carson it's an easy card to include. Do I include it in everybody? No. Do I'm ever upset if someone plays Task Force? No. I think it's fine. I like it in people like I played it most recently in a clue-oriented Wilson Richards, because it does everything he wants to do, right? And at a certain point, when you have all your assets in play, or alternatively using Nose to the Grindstone to get resources, it's one of those things where you don't need to really worry about it too much. Flurry of Blows, I think I'm going to put in the meh tier. It's not bad, but it is a little bit overcosted. I think it's a good effect. Like, it is like a powerful like thing. I did it in Butterfly Swords, but it just is a little bit too expensive XP-wise, which kind of brings it down from good into meh for me. I'm trying to think of which one of these cards I'm going to call amazing. I think I'm going to put Testing Sprint into the good one as well. A reason for this is that you need to build around it. So it's not something you can just like auto-include. Every one of my Testing Sprint decks that I've played have been built around Testing Sprint. Like, you need to like come up with a plan for it. And then you also realistically build out of it, right? You eventually build out of Testing Sprint. I've never like taken a Testing Sprint with me later. And that's mostly because Testing Sprint does not scale with the scenarios as well. Not in the sense that like the card gets worse, but the fact, the card changes its value from scenario to scenario, right? Like, if I'm playing a Seeker or Seeker Splash, I will always bring this with me to the first scenario of Circle and Done. Every time. But other campaigns, I might not bring it. Thorough Inquiry is also good. I'm also going to double this up with Bank Job, because I think Bank Job is also a good card, and they're both kind of in the same thing. Do I think they're both amazing? No, but I think they're both good cards. Going back to what I was saying earlier, would I rather play Faustian Bargain or Bank Job? In a vacuum, yes, but we're not going to be talking about that in a vacuum. Yes, Faustian Bargain would be an amazing, but that's just because it's easier to include Faustian Bargain, but that doesn't make it necessarily, you know, better or worse, just flat. Dirty Deeds is amazing. I think this card is underplayed, and I understand why it's underplayed. It's like 3 experience. But now in a lot of my rogues, like especially in like Tony Morgan, back in the day, or Moni Torgan as we've been calling him again, we're bringing that back, I would always play Backpack, right, to find my weapons. But now I'm starting to replace my Backpack with Dirty Deeds, which I've been enjoying. A big reason that I like about Dirty Deeds is that the symbols are relevant when you don't need it, but 2, you're actually like getting you're getting so much, like it's this one is probably I didn't talk about this one earlier, but this card is the easiest double to see your actions come out of, right? Like, I understand you can see that pretty easily with Task Force, but the idea is, I do agree with Valentin was saying earlier, where this one also, like, even though you're getting 3, is it actually worth the card 100% of the time? And I think the answer to that is not necessarily always worth that, right? In this one, you're getting 2 actions, but they're like good. And this is also coupling with the search for the illicit asset. Generally, I'm using this to play a gun and firing that gun, and I think it's a very successful card for that reason. Antediluvian Hymn, as foreshadowed. Ethereal Weaving, as foreshadowed. I'm going to put these in the bad times, brother. I agree with chat. I think that these are the ones that are looking to be the... are looking to be, they're just bad. We talked about them earlier. They're just so hard to like get the full value from, or even like see the full value from, at least from my perspective. So it's one of those things. All right, Delir, I'm gonna go on this. Yes, you're getting, it's better than 3 raw actions, but then you're also playing 2 resources in a card, right? So like, it is better than 3 raw actions if we're covering the top left and then also the card, right? Like there's these things that come with it. Yes, you can see the 3 actions that come, like, yeah, I think you're getting too lost in the sauce here, my boy. I think it's like one of those things where it's, I don't know why I called you my boy. I meant to call you my brother, but boy somehow slipped out, so I apologize for that. You're my brother. It's one of those things where it's better because you get to discover a clue to connecting location, right? It's like it's a Tesla's clue. I agree, that is very good, but it's one of those things that you're also then, I think if you want to call it, yeah, he can be my boy. Yeah, I can run with that too. But it's one of those things where I think that if we want to give respect that the clue is Tesla's, we also got to give respect that it costs a card of your 30 cards in your deck, right? I think that also comes with it. So that's why I didn't want to talk about that, because as soon as we start talking about like the numbers and all that stuff that's not just on the tin, I feel like it becomes a little bit complicated. But I do agree with you, and then I also disagree with the sentiment, if that makes sense. Elaborate Distraction, I'm also going to give this one to Amazing. Good, this one can actually live down here. I do think this card is very good. I think this card is actually sneakily one of the best double cards. I need to go back. I think I was super high on this one when it first came out. I don't know what my rating that I gave it was. Would I give it a 3.5? I'm curious. Hype ranking. I gave it a 3. Yeah, I think like I'd probably give this one like a 3.5 now. I think it's a good card. Like I think this card's like, I think it's very, very good. Like I think this one I think I gave that one a 5. I think Dirty Deeds was like one of my only 5s from this whole thing. Yeah, I didn't give a lot of 5s to Hemlock. But yeah. So what Elaborate Distraction is so good, I do think it goes like worse with less players, but at the same time I'm playing this right now in a deck with 2 players, and I'm actually like, wait a minute, every time I resolve this card is actually just kind of been like really good. How many enemies do you need to deal with for this card to be worth it? 2. Like that's the crazy thing. Like we look at all these other things, right? We look at like testing sprint, you want to get a lot of locations. We look at wrong place, right time. This one is actually the easiest to get its value from. And if you're able to like kill an Acolyte or kill a Whippoorwill, it's one of those things that it's just like a really fine panic button. I wouldn't run, I'd run like one of these for most of it. Yeah, and that's the thing, like killing an Acolyte one location away is probably itself worth multiple actions, right? So like then it's because like if you kill an Acolyte with this, you actually got 2 actions. I don't know, like it's one of the ones where like I think it scales the action value in a way that's quicker than the others. And to go on what you were saying about is dependent on player count, most groups with 2 or less will kill most enemies on the map. I think that's also true, but I also think that enemy management has been changing. I think enemy management is different than it was 3 years ago. And I think there's a lot of reasons why now you do not have to necessarily kill all your enemies. So in the right deck and 2 players, I think this card can be successful in the same way that it would be on higher player counts. Because I think enemy management has changed. And I think this is part of the reason to kind of show the trend of why enemy management has changed. And including that new card, which is not in here yet, but it's the new Bums Rush? Yeah. I don't know what his card yet. The diarrhea card is like showing how enemy management is different than it was before. And like conveniently, there's a lot of people who could play these 2 cards together, Bums Rush and Elaborate Distractions, just as an example. You can download at the bottom left. Oh, it's all good. I know I could put in that, but it's I think it was just for 1 card for this. I think wrong place, right time. I'm also going to put in bad times, brother. But I'm curious. I agree. Holly Helicopter. Hemlock was a move in that direction. And then obviously, as we know, things change from campaign to campaign. Drowned City might not have the same thing. We're probably going to see the deep one mechanic return. So then maybe like these strategies are going to change. But I do think that ultimately, yes. Even like campaigns are now like becoming one of those things where you can better prepare yourself for them. And like I think like even in like Dunwich, Elaborate Distraction can be very good like in Hemlock. It's very interesting, but I think that there's something interesting to discuss there. Bide your time, I'm going to put in meh. I think I was pretty hard on this in my first rating. Gave it a 2. I'd probably give it a 2.5 now. And refine, I'm going to put down into the bad times, brother. I just don't think this is worth it. Do you know what also gets you XP? Winning the scenario. And yeah, you might be able to win the scenario and also refine your way. But so the only time I've played refine, I'm going to talk about Bide Your Time in a second too. The only time I would play refine is if I want a checkbox in the middle of a scenario. Like that's the only time I'd look at playing refine. I played it as a joke in my Nat Cho deck for Guardian Week to get an upgrade in the middle of a scenario. I mean, it's exactly what I said, right? Like, I think that's where the power of a refine is. The other time I played it is when I was playing, I think it was like a Leo Anderson deck, and I wanted to get Elders in the middle of a scenario on my Runic Axe or something like that. So I used it for that. Otherwise, I just don't think it's like particularly worth it. For that. I do agree. The art is nice and the artist is very good. I think that the mainstays though for the art in Arkham the artists are really good. Actually, I'm so sad that the location artist that I really like, she got a job for another. She's no longer freelancing, so she's not going to probably be doing, I mean, she'll probably be in Drowned City, but her art is so good. Refine is great in Heart of the Elders Part 1. Now there's an idea. There's an idea. Alright, and the reason why I Bide Your Time, I just think obviously, the reason why this card is just fine, like very meh, it should be pretty obvious, right? Like, what does it actually do? Nothing, because it's kind of different than the others. It's great for boss battles as Guardians, right? Like if you know a boss is going to be showing up next turn, just go freaking crazy. And I like that niche that it fills. But obviously, this card doesn't actually like do much. And that's also kind of why I like the design. As I mentioned earlier, this is different than the other double cards. Yes, I agree 100%. Bide Your Time lives in a fantasy. You're a fighter and you want to store some actions when the map is empty, but in practice there's always better cards to add. I agree 100%. If someone plays Bide Your Time, I would never be like, what are you doing? I'm always like, oh, that's nice, but I have the exact same like thought for it, you know? It's hard to like really include it when there's just like better options. Okay. Maybe better in Marion? Yes. Yes. I saw Marion in action for the first time on Friday. She is going to be very good. She's going to be very good. They played a Stand Together 3 as Marion, and then comboed it into the Ever Vigilant 4 with her ability. I don't like that line of thinking right there. I have a beef with that. Marion's deck slot's very expensive and Bide Your Time definitely doesn't fit. That is close-minded, my friend. That is not the way to approach deck building IMO. I feel like there could be a place for it. We don't know. We don't know her full pool. We also don't know what people can do with it. I think that is a very reductive line of thinking for approaching that, because I could definitely see Marion using Bide Your Time to great success without question, because she just changes the value of everything, right? But yeah, like, just Marion is going to be a very powerful investigator. And when Akanos did a stand together into an Ever Vigilant 4, I was like, I have awoken. I have seen God, and it is this Marion right now. These are our these are the double cards of rating. That's the video. Thanks for joining me, everybody. I hope you enjoyed this town hall. We'll be doing another one of these pretty soon. I don't know about the topic yet. I have to come up with something. But if you have any ideas for topics that you want me to do for these town halls, definitely let me know. Definitely let me know. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a good one. And as always, GG's. And as always, huge thank you to our patrons. I've realized I forgot to hit the patron button, so I got to kill a bit more time. But yeah, thanks for watching, everybody. You all rock. Have a good one. And bye.